Hello everybody, welcome back to RV TV. My name is Ron Stafford and I'm from RV Warehouse. As you may know, we manufacture the great Annex range of products, and one of those products is our great awning skins. And today in this video we're going to show you the steps to take to swap your old fabric over with your brand new fabric onto your caravan awning. So follow us and we'll take you step by step to do it safely to ensure you get the best result for your caravan. Okay, so there's a few things to think about when swapping and playing with roll-out awnings. The two major components that operate an awning is the two internal springs, and those springs are tensioned somewhat like a roller door on your house, but there's two big high tensile springs inside the roller itself which are tensioned. And of course, those tensioning is secured to the awning arm via a bolt or a screw to lock that tension onto the arm, but removing that is a very risky, or can be risky if you're not following the correct steps. So some hints around that. You should always look to start fitting your awning skin as close to the roll-up position as possible. When it's in the rolled up position, it has the least amount of tension on that spring. So when you go to play with removing it from the arm set, you've got the least amount of pressure there that can bite you. So step one, always try and remove the awning from the caravan as close to the roll-up position as possible. That's very important. Essentially, there's three main awning types on the market. They all have their variations of profile and ways in which you will lock the spring tension in. Today we're working with a Dometic roll-out awning, so we can definitely, these are the most common awnings, so this will help a lot of you. We'll take you through the steps now on how to safely remove the awning from the caravan and get it on the ground so we can safely remove the fabric. So on both ends of the awning, what we're going to do now is remove the awning system from the caravan, and to do that I need to remove the two set screws that are holding the fabric in place in the sail track, and also remove the two screws from the top mounting bracket of the awning arm to release it from the caravan wall. Once that's unscrewed, I like to close the arms together and lock them together with the travel lock, so when we remove them, they don't fall apart. Once you've released both top brackets on both ends and the top screws on both ends, your awning should then be able to freely move in readiness to take it off the van. Now, to remain as safe as possible removing the awning, and depending on the length of your awning also, it's always great to grab a set of hands so you're not lifting all the weight yourself, especially if you're trying to work off a ladder. So I've asked my co-worker Mick to come and help me walk this awning off. So our next step is to walk the awning off the van. And all we're going to do is, now that the top has been released and the screws are loose, we are now just going to release the bottom foot from the bracket and hold this weight. Then we simply walk it off. Now we've got the awning on the ground, it's now time to detension and remove the springs. So there's a couple of steps here to follow, and this is where we're starting to play with the springs, so you want to take note of how to do it safely. So inside this roller tube is currently an awning spring, and here's one from another awning I've pulled out. Now, essentially it's a big high tensile spring that is done up under pressure through this spindle. So at the moment what we have to do is, this is currently loaded and we need to deload it to allow us then to remove these rivets and remove the spring assembly altogether. Our spring is being locked on by way of the ratchet system here, and the ratchet system is currently in roll out position. So to detension the easiest way possible is to simply firmly grip the roller, take a little bit of turn pressure away from this ratchet so you can quickly release it. So I'm now holding the pressure. I'm going to now count how many times this ratchet passes by. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this has around 7 turns, which is fairly standard. A Dometic awning will have somewhere between 7 and 8 turns typically. A Carefree of Colorado typically has 5 to 6 turns, and a sunburst or Aussie Traveller sunburst, we usually have somewhere between 8 and 9 turns. So this one here is 7 turns, so when we come time to put the spring back on, we'll know how many turns to put back on it. Okay, so now that the tension's deloaded, we can now start to pull the awning parts away from each other. So on the Dometic, we use 2 7/16 spanners, and we simply unbolt these spindles from the awning arm. So if you're finding the bolt very hard to remove, there's probably residual tension still on your spring, so let it undo a couple more times to get the pressure off the bolt. Now the bolt's removed, you can, on this model, take off the top hat. On other models, it will be just an end cap coming off, and you can now separate the arm and the roller itself. So now we've got the awning arms unbolted from the roller. We can now remove the springs. We'll use our 5mm rivet drill here to remove the 5mm rivets. And then once they're both drilled out, you can pull your spring straight out. Okay, so arms are unbolted, springs are out. We're now going to unroll the fabric in readiness to remove the drum from the skin. Little tip here is, where possible, leave your pull strap in the drum to better dictate or show you which 2 grooves to replace the new spring onto. So this one here obviously doesn't have any skin on there, and this will indicate it for us when we go to put the new skin on. So leave that in, and the best way is to just simply leave your skin down, because the new skin will go on top and stay clean. Just slide your drum straight off the skin. We now are ready to go with our new fabric. Bring your new fabric and sit at the same orientation on top of the old fabric. Just bring it over, lay it down. The old one's now creating a buffer between the ground and the new one so it doesn't get dirty. And now you can line up your old splines together. Now, there's 2 ways we can supply awning skins, and it goes via how many splines that we sew into the material. So this is a spline. This is the part that feeds into the awning drum when you slide the drum back on. And we can make it in such a way that we can have it slide onto 1 spline and manually put a spline in, or we can sew 2 splines and just feed it straight onto the drum. The benefit between both is if we stitch both splines in, it's easier to install, but you get a stitching line at the drum. If you've ever had a problem with water leaking through the stitching, then that could be a problem for you with 2 splines sewn in. 1 spline sewn in doesn't give you a stitching line on the 2nd spline, so water can definitely not come through the material and drip in underneath the drum. Okay, so time to slide it back onto the drum. We're going to start this first spline off in its hole and get it started. And we simply slide the drum straight back on. So once you've slid that on, we now just make sure the skin is in equal position to the anti-flap kit or pre-drilled holes you have on your awning drum. It's very important we get those aligned properly so your anti-flap kits will fit again. So I've looked now and I've slid to adjust to ensure it's an equal distance on both sides for the anti-flap kit hole to sit under the edge of the fabric. So with only 1 spline on this particular skin, we are now going to manually insert the 2nd spline. So to do that, we're just going to roll this fabric over and get in line with the 2nd spline. So to manually put the 2nd spline in, I'm just using a piece of sail track here that we have. You could use anything that's long and thin to help push this skin straight into the spline. But ultimately all we're doing is just pushing that spline straight, that fabric straight inside the spline, and you go along the whole length, just helping that fabric into the spline. And you'll feel it get nice and tight on the drum. We don't want any wrinkles. If you don't get it tight enough, that's when you get wrinkles on your fabric. This material is now ready to accept the spline. Okay, so once you've pushed your fabric in and it's ready for the spline, we take our spline and we simply just feed it straight in to the fabric. And all we're going to do is get that all the way through to the other end. And that now secures the fabric to the drum. And by doing it this way, no stitching holes, no leaking onto the drum when it's set up. If you have a little hook tool similar to this one in your toolbox, use that to spear into the spline and pull it along, and it makes it a lot easier to pull your spline through. Now with the spline's in place and the fabric locked, we'll cut off the excess spline. Just a sharp Stanley knife's all you need here, just to trim the spline off flush with the drum. And now it's time to put our springs back in. Just before you put your springs back in, give them a quick spray with some lubricant. This will keep them operating really cleanly. Now with the medics, there's two little ears that lock in on the inside of the cap that marry up with this cutout. Get those back in the same area. Time to put a rivet in it. A couple of 5mm rivets go straight back into your spring. Once your springs are back in, I have an air riveter. You could also use a hand riveter, and just put your rivets back into place. So the next step now is to grab your friend who's giving you a hand, and we're going to roll the awning up onto the drum. So I'll bring Mick in to give me a hand here, and just hand roll the material back onto the drum. Once we've done that, we will now re-tension the spring. So remembering when we first undid the tension, we had 7 turns come off, so it's now time to put those 7 turns back on. Little trick here when re-tensioning your spring, the springs can only tension one way. The best way to understand which way to turn the spindle on each end is to look at how the fabric is rolling on, what direction the fabric is rolling onto the drum. That's your best way to know you're doing it correctly. So this one here is coming over and around, and therefore we'll follow that same direction. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have a locking pin that we slide into the locking pin slot, and that now locks that spindle in place. Once that's locked, we will keep the 2 bolt holes facing straight up and down to the ground. So when I put it on the other end, I can ensure those bolt holes are facing straight up and down to the ground, so they're both the same. Okay, so on this end here, there is no need to have a locking pin like the other end, because we have a ratchet that will lock the spring for us. So the only thing to ensure is that the lock is in the roll down position. When it's in the roll down position, it will lock the spring for us. We now want to just follow the same direction as the fabric. We're going to take our vice grips, lock onto our shaft, and we're going to turn our 7 turns on. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to have those 2 bolt holes pointing straight up and down to the ground to match the other end, and that's in readiness for us to re-bolt the arm on. Arm comes up. Slide in our top hat. Grab our bolt. Straight back through. Nut. Straight back onto the bolt. And 7/16 ring spanner and ratchet, or ring spanners, or whatever you have, and we're going to tighten that back up. No need to over tighten it, just so it's firm. I can feel that getting firmer, and that's bolted. Same on the other end. Using some side cutters, we can remove this locking pin for a spring on this end now, and we're now ready to slide it back onto the Caravan. So when it's time to slide back on, a quick and easy way to help you carry it on is undo one turn of fabric so you have this tail that's ready to feed into the track, ready to go. I also like to lift the awning height of the arm up to roughly the same height as the track, so everything's at the same level. And all we need to do is feed it straight into the start of the track, and you need to help it along for the first kind of 300 to 400 mil. It'll get to a point where it'll self feed itself, and if you very carefully just walk together, just walk it straight on. And once we get to here, just sit the awning straight back onto its mount. Now we just screw the top brackets, put the set screws back in, and you're finished. Now, after doing the second one, with that top one closed, the front one closed, if you've put your top bracket in the right position on this end, you should find that your arms close over each other cleanly. That's important. We want clean closure at this point, so we don't get any interference as we roll it away later. Now, before we do the top screws, I'm going to roll it in once and twice just for the fabric to make sure it's square on itself before I commit the top screws. So all I'm going to do here is pull the awning straight out. Okay, I'm going to slide this strap back to the middle. I'm going to flick the switch. I'm allowing it to roll up from the center. I'm looking for this to have both arms cleanly closed over each other, which has now happened. So I'm very happy that's sitting right. So now I'll put my two top screws in and the job's done. When putting the top set screws in, it's important that when you drill the top screw in, it goes through the actual vinyl in the sail track and not just next to the vinyl. We want that screw to lock the vinyl itself. So I'm just putting a little pilot hole through the track, being very careful not to slip off and drill through the awning itself, of course. And when I insert this set screw, it's going through the track into the vinyl, and that's now locking that vinyl strong. Okay, so we've locked it at the top of the Caravan side. We're now going to lock it at the drum side so that the fabric won't shrink along the drum. Now, for any of you that have had any flap kits before and you've had to drill multiple holes, that's because the fabric shrinks. So we're now going to lock it on the drum so it won't shrink. So when setting this side, we want to use a 1/8 drill bit, and we want to go just inside the line of this stitching. What we're looking to do is pick up the hem underneath as well as the top. So we're going to very gently go through and drill into the drum itself until we just pop through. Now we'll slot a little screw in there and lock it off. So there you have it. Swapping an awning skin, when done properly and with a helper, is a very simple and straightforward process, so don't be afraid to give it a go yourself. Of course, we're always available on our free call line to give you some pointers and advice, and even hook up a video call if you need that kind of assistance. We're happy to supply it. If you've got any value out of today, please consider subscribing to our channel. Hit a like and share it with your friends. We'd be glad to spread the word to help people all over this country replace their awning skin. If you've got any further questions, go to our website, www.greatannexes.com.au, and there's lots of information and videos there for you to check out. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.